Welcome to today's talk. This is Carolyn Woods from InEight, and we are going over real-life tips to choose the right estimating solution. Our speaker today is AJ Waters. AJ has a master's in structural engineering from the University of Nebraska, and he has experience doing estimating for vertical building and infrastructure projects. He worked for the training and implementation of InEight products for 3 years at one of our major clients, and now runs the solution engineering team for InEight. AJ, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Carolyn, and good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're located today. I've noticed over the last few years, there are two types of people out there. There are people out there that are really cognizant of what time it is, and those people are a lot like me. And there are people out there that really could care less what time it is, and that's more like my wife. Opposites do attract. For those of you who are like me, does anybody want to throw out some overs and unders on whether or not I can fill 25 hours today with content? Some of you may not realize this if you're more or less worried about time, but the webinar invite for today says we're supposed to go until noon tomorrow, and rest assured that's not what we're doing today. I cannot talk for 25 hours, let alone have 25 hours worth of good content to give you today. So I wanted to level set everyone before we even get started. Don't worry, 45 minutes to an hour at most. But don't expect me to last 25 hours, hopefully. But here's our quick agenda for those 45 minutes. We're gonna get ready with some concepts of what it takes to go out and search for an estimating software. We're gonna get set. What do we do once we have everything ready? And then a little added bonus, once you've selected that software, what it takes to get going. So we'll look at things like sanity checks when we're getting ready, knowing who our audience is, and what metrics we want to focus on. As we get set, we'll look at how we can take those items and navigate that dark software abyss. I know I've gone out and looked for softwares myself. It could be a lot of work. We'll try to distinguish the difference between what is an added bonus versus a shiny object, and then how as a team we agree to disagree on what features are important. And then, as I mentioned, we'll wrap that up with what it takes to implement that software and have it be successful, and how positive peer pressure can impact that. But first, before we get into all that, you probably are wondering, who is this guy and why does he have any experience or relevance in talking about this topic? Well, as Carolyn mentioned, I started in construction a number of years ago at a company called Kiewit. They are a large general contractor here in the US, and I was mainly in their vertical building department, but I started out as a structural engineer, and quickly got tired of just sitting in a corner crunching numbers. So I changed careers really quick and went into estimating, because for those of you on the line who are estimators, that is different than sitting in a corner and crunching numbers. But actually, I had a lot of fun with that, and got to work on some really cool projects. The signature project that was actually my favorite is the College World Series baseball stadium. So if any of you are baseball fans, that's one of the big projects that I had a lot of fun working on. But after I was an estimator for quite a while, I became what they call the subject matter expert, and then after that, a training manager for Kiewit. And really, that's kind of the crux of where the story will be today. So we'll come back to that here in a second. I transitioned then after a few years leading training of Kiewit software products into software itself. I left Kiewit for InEight and became a product manager. I led a couple of different products that InEight was developing to roll out to the masses. And then recently transitioned, well, I guess it's been 2 years now, that I transitioned over to the Director of Solutions Engineering, where I take this construction experience and use it to help other companies find solutions for their IT or their software problems. And for those of you who are wondering, I am a Cornhusker. That Master's of Engineering came from Nebraska, so go Big Red. But really, again, the focus of today is going to be around what I learned while I was a subject matter expert. So what is a subject matter expert? For those of you on this line that are estimators and have been doing it for a little while in a certain market type or as part of certain projects, you are a subject matter expert. And really what subject matter experts were for us at Kiewit was we were the people who were going to review the softwares, grade them out for capabilities because we knew the subject matter. We knew what we wanted it to do. We were going to put together write-ups about which softwares could handle what we expected and which softwares had gaps or holes. And then we were going to be the people who went out across the company and trained that new software. So a subject matter expert is really any one of you, could be one, but what that role became was the grading, the rating, and finally the rollout of the software that we selected. So today's story or topic, tips for choosing and estimating software, is just going to be some of those lessons learned and what it takes to put this all together. So let's get ready and begin with our sanity checks. So the first question you've got to ask yourself when you're going out there and looking at multiple software options or thinking about the idea of standardizing your company on a software is, are we prepared for this? And when it comes to being prepared, first things first, how are we going to pay for it, right? Are we going to make budget for this in next year's annual plan? Are we going to stop using a software that we're already paying for? Is that going to allow for us to get budget for this? And there's a difference when we talk about budget. Budget's not just the hard cost of paying for the software. It's also do we have the budget and costs available for the lack in productivity, right? Typically, when you transition to a new software, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and it's going to take some time. Are we prepared to pull employees away from their job and lose a little bit of productivity in that early going? And that takes us to the second point of pulling employees away. And do we have the quote unquote spare time to go out and review softwares, right? Because we're going to dedicate people as subject matter experts to an effort like this. Are we prepared to dedicate people part-time? Are we prepared to dedicate them full-time? Because it's not just shopping for the software, but it's the implementation side as well. Remember that in our story, the last step at Kiewit as subject matter experts is we traveled around with the training team to help get it off the ground. And so it was twofold, not just shopping for the software, but implementing. And then even past that, approvals have layers, right? So when we are looking at and grading out softwares, there's going to be a level of involvement and time required up the chain for the approval to go out and make a purchase. So what we found and what works for us, successful companies that go out and do a software search remove all the other obstacles for the selection team during the most critical points. So during the evaluation and demonstration phase, all other distractions are removed, and finding a software becomes that person's full-time job, just as an idea. The last thing that we have to ask ourselves in are we prepared for this is, do we have what it takes to drive and push change? Because we all know change is very difficult. And there are those people that are stuck in their ways, whether it's a template that they have in their current system or specific rate sheets that they don't want to lose. Everybody has to be ready and prepared to drive change and push for the change. The next step in getting yourself ready is knowing your audience. Do we have the right people for this endeavor? And I'll be the first to admit, when I first heard the term stakeholder, I had no idea what they were referring to. Is that my waiter as he brings out my order? Is it the guy holding the nail as they drive in the temp post? What is a stakeholder per se? But understanding who your stakeholders are, and they're going to be people like you, estimators. They're going to be sponsors, maybe the management team, maybe the project team. You might want to get their opinion about the results that you spit out of the estimating device, right? And so understanding who your stakeholders are and what level of involvement each one of them have is a key piece of knowing your audience. But you also can't forget executive sponsorship. What is in it for your executive level leadership, right? As you bring on those approval layers, they've got to know what's in it for them. And it could be a better dashboard like you can see here, or better reporting about how you're performing with your estimates. That might be a key goal for executive sponsorship. Maybe it's something that you've developed as an in-house report that needs to be something that spits out of the new system. Whatever it might be, don't forget that executive sponsorship is key to getting both budget and time approved when it comes to selecting a new software. The last thing that we need to really understand to get ready to go out and select a new software is what is important to us, really. In my current role as Director of Solutions Engineering here at InEight, we go out and we work with companies early on in this process that are searching for a new software, and we walk through some of the benefits, and every company has told us once, twice, 100 times, we want to be more efficient. But what does more efficient mean to you? Does that mean that you want to make or create or spit out more completed estimates? Does it mean that you want to work in tighter teams with less people on these estimates? Or does it just simply mean you want the estimates to be more accurate? Whatever more efficient means to you, that's something that needs to be identified before you even go out and start searching for the software. For us, our story at Kiewit was we wanted to have more estimate dollars per man hour. So we didn't necessarily want to have fewer estimators. We wanted to push out more estimates with the existing team that we had. So we weren't looking for people to lose their jobs or anything like that. We just wanted to be more efficient by having more estimate dollars per man hour. That was the metric we were chasing. But don't forget, when it comes to metrics and trying to achieve ROI, you have to know where you are now in order to quantify your success down the road. If you don't know where you are now with whatever that metric might be, there's no way to tell if your software endeavor was effective. So don't forget, before you go out and you start taking away from people's time and you start searching for new softwares, don't forget to baseline where you're at currently with those metrics that you're creating. Because at the end of the day, you want to get to a new place, and you've got to know where that new place is. Of course, when you're developing these metrics, you're getting that baseline. Make sure that it's SMART. And SMART is a terminology that's been around longer than I have, so it's nothing that I've invented, right? But you want to be specific with your goals. It's got to be, just more efficient is not as specific as you'd like it to be. What do you mean by more efficient? And measurable. How will you be more efficient? Ours was dollars per man hour. Yours could be estimates per year or win-loss percentage. Those are measurable items. It also has to be attainable, though. It can't be, we want to win $200 million more work this year when we're only a $20 million company, right? Make sure it's attainable. And of course, it has to be relevant. It's got to be relevant to the estimating software. Yes, I would like to be better looking too, but better looking is not relevant to searching for an estimate software. All I know how to do is color coordinate my shirt, my belt, and my shoes. That's not really relevant, right? And lastly, it has to be time bound. For us, we were looking at 2020, and the year that we did this process, we kicked off in 2011. So we gave ourselves almost a 10-year runway to get to the metrics that we were setting up. Metrics also are cost related. So we've talked about knowing like where you want to be in efficiency, but where do you want to be in terms of cost? There are ROIs when you go out and purchase software, or at least you hope there's some sort of ROI, because if there's not, what is the purpose of the investment, right? And InEight actually has a great calculator out there. If you want to reach out to us, we can help you work through some of the differences between hard versus soft ROIs. Hard costs that you can easily measure could be things like improved productivity or improved win rates. Those soft ROIs are things like being more accurate. That's very difficult to measure, but it's kind of hidden in the background. Being able to eliminate bias when it comes to selecting subcontractors, that's kind of a soft metric. It's hard to calculate, but at the end of the day, it's going to return hard dollars and hard values for you. And one more thing, just to put in a little plug for the InEight webinars, don't forget to standardize. If you don't have a standardized system in place, rolling out a new software over the top of an already difficult process to understand is just going to give you a new software with a difficult process. Standardizing where you're at and approaching your estimates with less risk and less variation will help in making this a smoother transition. One of our first goals at Kiewit, before we even went after the estimating software itself, was to standardize our cost coding structure across the entire company. So that effort ran a little bit ahead of the estimating effort and was really our first goal. And if you want more information on how consistency and standardization can help your estimates, feel free to go back to InEight.com and look at Aaron Cohen's webinar from last month, not last year. We have a real struggle with time around here, 25 hours last year, all sorts of things. And don't forget, estimating usually is a jumping off point. Our chief product officer here at InEight said it best when he said, what comes after estimating? Ideally, your solution integrates with accounting or scheduling or can expand from estimating into other modules. Because when it comes to estimating the data that you develop, that is just the beginning of what could be a few months or a few years worth of work. And so we actually had parallel teams at Kiewit that were performing similar exercises to what you're seeing here in the estimating system, going after other aspects of the project lifecycle. So they were looking at how we could attack other parts and pieces of handling a project, and we had to have frequent integration meetings between the teams because we wanted to make sure whatever we selected as an estimating system would support whatever they selected for project controls, for field management, for payroll, etc. All right, so we've talked a lot, almost 20 minutes now, on what we need to get ready. We've understood we have to have time and budget. We've understood We have to have an audience, and we've understood that we need metrics that we're going to baseline and we're going to go after. So now let's get all that information set and get it prepared so that we can navigate that dark software abyss. And what do I mean by that? Well, first and foremost, where do we begin with all of this information? And it really boils down to putting together a request for proposal, right? Some sort of document that's going to outline everything that you've collected so that vendors like us at InEight can do all the hard work up front. A really good request for a proposal will have your requirements and a grading scale that you can send out to different softwares, different providers, and have them rate themselves. And really that gives you an opportunity to sit back for a little bit and let the vendor either get themselves into the conversation or rate themselves out of the conversation with very little work from your selection team itself. So putting together a really good RFP can greatly reduce the amount of work up front you need to qualify vendors. But then it comes to which vendor do we send that RFP to? There are as many software providers out there as there are stars in the sky, right? So there are thousands of vendors available, and a lot of those vendors are very focused on certain areas of the work. So even before you send out that RFP, you need to understand how you're going to qualify out some of the Google search results that you receive. As an example, there's a great software out there called Estimacy. At least I think it's great because it's one of the first Google searches I get. What's funny about Estimacy, though, is that it cuts expenses and gives me trustworthy IT project estimates. IT projects are totally different than construction projects, right? So Estimacy may not be one of those products that you want to send it out to. There might be certain softwares out there that are specific to a certain type of work. Maybe you do vertical building work, but you're looking at a software that's built for infrastructure. So be very, very careful as you qualify out who you send the RFP to, and that can be a part of your RFP, right? What markets do you support? That could be a great question to include in your RFP. But really, when you think about it, the best place to begin, and I'm going to ask for some audience participation. So if you've got your chat window ready, I'm going to ask for some audience participation here. But somebody real quick in your chat window, tell us, what was the last good movie that you saw? Last good movie.
And we're ready. First answer. No good movies. Gosh. Oscar season.
None at all. Yeah, it's Oscar season. Who would have thought? Well, all right. So the last good movie that I saw, let's see, what did I watch recently? That I saw for the first time. We'll do it that way. The last good movie I saw for the first time was the new Lego movie. It was fantastic. I didn't think that Lego Movie 2 could top the lesson from Lego Movie 1 for me and as an adult to share my toys with my kids. But it did even better. It had a great built-in lesson for siblings. So if you've got multiple children, it'd be a great movie to take people to. But what am I doing right now? I'm promoting a movie, right? Via word of mouth. What about the last great restaurant you saw or went to or ate at, right? Same kind of thing. We talk all the time about great experiences that we have, all this free advertising for different companies. One of the best places to start when it comes to navigating the dark software abyss is ask your employees, what have you used before? Maybe they came from another company. What software have you used before? Ask your subcontractors or your joint venture partners or someone that you're working with what they use or what have they used before. This gives you the ability to look at multiple systems through the lens of your peers, and they're either going to tell you good stories or bad stories, why you should look at that software or why that software is not something worth chasing after. So that's a great place to begin when navigating that abyss. And then lastly, you need to understand who in your company is going to score your RFP as they come back in. Once those results are in, who's going to score it and how are they going to score it? So as those RFP responses start coming in from the vendors, make sure you have a team prepared to score those RFPs, and they all have a baseline understanding of how they're going to score those RFPs. Because what'll happen is software vendors will try to throw in some added bonuses on those RFPs. They'll throw out some shiny objects that look appealing, but may not necessarily add value to you as a company. So you need to understand, does this new shiny object that this software provider included in their RFP, but we didn't ask for, does it really add value? For example, in 1998, over 20 years ago, Electrolux created a refrigerator with a TV in it. Now, everybody thought this would be a brilliant idea, right? But really all that TV did was put a calendar on the front of my fridge and take up half of the first top shelves. You know, flat screens weren't exactly that prevalent. Back in 1998, this was probably more of a shiny object. Ooh, look, a TV in the fridge. That sounds brilliant. Versus an added value. 20 years later, though, Samsung is still making TVs in their fridges. However, the TV doesn't take up any additional space, and it has other features like the ability to look up recipes, the ability to do inventory management, and have the fridge alert you when you took the last egg out or drank the last ounce of milk, right? And so understand what the difference is between that added bonus and a shiny object. And it really comes down to the difference between a feature and a function. Functions are the product's answers to a set of tasks. So we put together a couple of different tasks, the product spits out an answer. That's what we would consider a function. Features are the inherent tools in the product used to perform those functions. So let's look at a real simple example. We're gonna make a phone call. The function at the end of the day is the phone call. We want the phone ringing to someone else. That is the function. So at the end of the day, we want the estimate totaling on the bottom line, right? That's the function. A feature to make that phone ring is the keypad. Think of the ways that the keypad has innovated over the years. Anybody remember this spin dial? I had one of these as a kid. And I remember when we upgraded to the button keypad, it was much quicker. But today's world, it's a simple tap on a circle and the call is ringing, right? So they've eliminated quite a few steps. In some cases with that dial pad, it could be 9, 10, depending on if it was a long distance or a local call, steps to get the phone call made. Now it's a single tap, one step to get the phone call made. And so understand that difference. What are the functions that we want this system to do? How many steps does it take? How many features are required to get us there? And then how do we prioritize and how do we agree to disagree on which answers are correct? Most people will start with ranking by seniority of the stakeholders. Which high-level stakeholders like which answers the best? But the other side of the coin, if you have the ability to talk about it, is cost versus value, right? The difference between cost and value. The cost of the product is the amount you spend to purchase it, but the value is what your customer or you as the customer believes it is worth to you. So there's a difference there between what it costs you to add that shiny object versus what value it brings, what it's worth to you at the end of the day. And so making sure that you can clearly articulate that to those stakeholders is very, very important. But just as important as what the software can do is how long it takes to implement the software. A lot of people focus on what the software can do for them and forget at the end of the day, how long is it going to take us to get this installed? Is it 1 day? Is it 2 days? Is it 1 month? Is it 2 months? You lose productivity the longer it takes to implement this software. So is that added feature, is this bonus item, or does this RFP having one wrong answer compared to the other, is it worth an extra 3 weeks of implementation? So make sure you don't forget to include implementation time in your grading system. The best place, though, to always refer back to when it comes to prioritization is those metrics from before. You put together a whole list of metrics, and it's always best to refer back to those metrics as your grading point for each one of these systems and how you prioritize which answers are more appropriate than others. Now, most people would stop there. That would be the end of it. We've got our metrics, we've got them ranked, and we've prioritized them. But you're purchasing a software. This is an agreement that in a lot of today's world requires a much longer term agreement. Today's software isn't necessarily just a one purchase and you're done. A lot of it's subscription based. So there needs to be some compromise with that company as well. Make sure that you dive into the roadmap. Will the company give you access to their roadmap? Will they allow you to have an opinion on that roadmap? Do they value you as a customer and your opinion in what could make their software better? I know for us, when we were doing the selection at Kiewit, one of the big pieces of our requirements was a specific integration. And there were only a couple softwares that had that specific integration, and we didn't select either one of them. We selected a software that had a roadmap, had a plan in place of where they wanted to be, and let us give some insight into that roadmap. And they actually developed that integration as a part of their roadmap and where they were going, versus the two other softwares that already had that integration but had no roadmap. They weren't developing for the future. Their product had become very, very stagnant. So make sure that when you're evaluating that company, you also look at the company as a whole and how they plan to move forward, and not just what are they doing today. All right. So we've got all our data collected, we organized it, we've sent it out, we're grading it. We have now made a selection. Let's go. Let's get a software in place. Congratulations, you've done it. You hit the milestone, right? But there's a big but. Now that that software is in place, you've got people to train and you've got some ROI to achieve, because boy, howdy, did you make some promises to management to get that budget and that time approved, right? So how does change succeed? How do we best get our teams up and prepared for this new software? And how do we best achieve that new ROI? And let me ask you this. When was the last time somebody came in barking orders and it made you feel good to go make that change? While executive involvement in the selection of a new software is key, it is a fundamental need because of their approval and because of the budget and what it takes. Top down is not always the best way to implement change. And just as an example, we tried that a couple of times with a few of our softwares at Kiewit. We We tried it being more of a top-down, we're going to push this from the management perspective. And we had a few failures that way, and we had to take a step back and reorganize and re-understand what it was that it took to succeed. And what we found is, more so than listening to their managers or their executives, people will listen to their peers. And so champions among the people, that is the best way that we found to help change succeed when it comes to deploying this new software. And the reason I want to bring this up, instead of just stopping at, hey, congratulations, you've selected your software, is because these champions among the people, the first place you're going to find these are in your subject matter experts that you selected to help identify the software and that you selected to help grade the software and now are helping you implement it and implement change. So when you're looking at that subject matter expert, one great thing to look at is how good of an estimator they are. That's really, really good. But one other big thing to look at when you're selecting your subject matter experts is, what kind of relationships do they have in the company? What kind of influence do they have on peers around them? Because if they can be a positive influence for change and their peers want to be like them and want to know what they know, that makes change that much more successful at the end of the endeavor. Don't forget though, all change takes time. And we talked about this early in the beginning, but it will be a slow start to learning, regardless of what the product is and what you're expecting it to do. It's going to take a little bit of time. Once you hit it though, it's a very steep acceleration, and those efficiencies start to take hold, and that learning curve plateaus, and you've reached your ROI. So make sure you understand the learning curve. Don't forget it's going to take a little bit of time. And also, don't forget to learn from your mistakes. One of the key fundamental features that we looked for at Kiewit in a estimating software was the ability to look back at our history and how we estimated this in the past. Most of you probably have this. You probably have it in some sort of database somewhere, like an Excel spreadsheet or something of past productivities or past history of how you've done work. And so don't ever forget to learn from your mistakes, even when it comes to selecting a software vendor. If you've done this before, maybe speak to the guys who did that or the gals who led that effort and learn from their mistakes as well. So in summary, what have we learned today? Well, number one, we learned that to go out and select the right software, first, we need to get ready. We've got to know, are we prepared for this? Do we have the sanity checks in place to step out and tackle this endeavor? Do we know who our audience is and who our key stakeholders are going to be? And are we certain we understand what more efficient means to us, or whatever other metric it might be? And then once we have all that information prepared, we can get set. We can put together an effective strategy to navigate that dark, dark software abyss and pick our way through the stars to find the right product. We'll organize this information in a way that we avoid shiny objects and we understand exactly what it is we're after, and we will agree to disagree on the objects that we don't necessarily need. And then finally, if we've done all that correctly, we can implement a positive peer pressure around the entire company for change. Now, all of this stuff sounds great, and we've talked about it in the sense of estimating, But remember, as I mentioned earlier, our Kiewit journey, my role was solely focused on the estimator as a subject matter expert. But the company as a whole was selecting many, many more solutions around the entire process of a construction project. Hopefully, one of the things you've learned today is that the tips that we've talked about, while they're great for selecting and estimating software, they can also be applied to any new software. Just simply adjust who the stakeholders are, maybe some of the metrics and requirements, and line it up with the appropriate business process, and you can use these same tips to go after new accounting systems, new payroll systems, new time entry systems, whatever it might be that needs to be upgraded at your company. If you're hungry for more details on what it takes to go out and purchase software, InEight's got a great ebook out there, a buyer's guide to evaluating and selecting construction management software. You can contact us for a copy of that if you're looking for even more detail on each one of these points I've made today. And if you have enjoyed our webinar today, we have more to come. Our webinar series picks up again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time with David Wagner, the Vice President of Product Marketing. And he's going to be talking about driving project success with a single source of truth by taking and focusing on how a single source of truth can enhance your firm's document searching, communication, risk mitigation, and streamlining all of the turnover of that information around document management. So that's tomorrow if you're interested. We also have another estimating webinar coming up. It's coming up in late March. It's going to be a skill booster webinar. So for all estimators, it's not necessarily about how to do or how to pick up a software, but how to boost your skills. And that is titled Never Miss an Indirect and is coming out here late in March. So with that, I'll turn it over to any questions you might have. Feel free to use the chat in the system, and we'll answer some of your questions.
Not typing away quickly. There aren't any questions at this point, AJ.
All right. Well, I'll hang out for a couple more minutes just in case someone is working to get that chat window open and wants to send a question in. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time today. And I just got us in under the 25 hours. We made it work. So thank you for hanging with us.
I was really worried about the 24 hours. Someone did ask if how to get access to the recording, and so those will be posted. If you saw, AJ had a slide where he put up Aaron Cohen's presentation on standardizing estimating processes, and it's in that same place. So if you go to InEight.com/webinars, this webinar will be posted when it's ready. Well, very good, AJ. Thank you so much for your time today. And this was real life tips to choosing the right estimating system solution. See you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.